We are happy to announce that this episode of the SWW show is partially brought to you by Humble Bundle. Well, not really. We are part of the Humble Bundle referral program, and we just wanted to say that if you like really cheap games and maybe helping charity pending the Humble thing going on, all you have to do is go to humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. That's right, humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. And you just do your normal stuff, and it just kind of helps us get a couple bucks here and there. Maybe it helps AJ get his lights, maybe it's Mike camera, maybe we actually pay Corey for helping us out. But again, if you're going to go buy games anyway, it might be worth checking out. I will get us started then. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to one of these interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today with me a special guest from can't be that far away. To get us started, do you mind introducing yourself in the game we are here to talk about?
Sure. I am Thomas Henschel, also known online as Lord Yabo, and I am creating a new kind of role-playing game called Archmage Rises.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that this is a surprisingly dense game that seems to have, I think, at least a lot of systems backend for. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is as a studio is your first game.
And it's a complicated answer. So, as a studio, in order to support the development of the game, I have had to pause and go and build games for other studios. And we have released 3 games for other studios, but this is the first game that I have designed and led and am putting out there as Defiance Games. So maybe that was too long of an answer, but yes, it's our first official title.
No. That makes a lot of sense, and that does explain that. Like, 'cause I was like on the Steam, and I'm like, it's the only game. Like, I like, because also like the problem with studios too. A lot of times, like, there's a lot of like stuff that we do that people don't realize that we do because you can't always talk about it and stuff in being public. So it's always interesting kind of hear it. So I got to ask then. So as you said, as we'll get into the game, you kind of had this development process where it's like you were able to work for a bit, do some other paid work, kind of work for a bit, do some paid work. How has that kind of been of keeping kind of the flow and making sure the game is kind of like actively in development?
Yeah, great question. So I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and one of them was really believing the statement that you got to start your marketing right away. Like basically from the moment you start making your game, you got to start building that marketing buzz. And so I started working full-time on Archmage Rises in August of 2014. That is 9 years ago. You're hitting me on the 9th anniversary of me going full time on this thing, full indie as they call it. Up until that point, I was working on Archmage kind of part-time weekends and whatever, just prototyping and such. And I launched by publishing an article on Gamma Sutra, which has now been renamed GameDeveloper.com. And I ended up with the #1 article on Gamma Sutra. And it was pretty amazing when I was in the #2 position and the Blizzard devs talking about Loot 2.0 on Diablo 3 was above me. And then my article went above the Diablo 3 one. And so I got like 10,000 fans in the first week. And then I have proceeded to take 9 years to get this game into early access. And so when you ask, like, how do you like maintain something like that across 9 years? And especially when there was like a whole year where we weren't even developing the game, we were doing contract work for another studio in order to develop the game. It's really hard to maintain people's interest in the game across 9 months, never mind 9 years. And my tactic has been just to be as open and honest as I can about like what is going on. It's like, hey, we need to finance the game. I have this opportunity to do this. I think it's going to make us enough money to be able to grow the team, and I'm going to have to put the game down for a year. And so I did that, and it's hard for me to track like how many fans I lost while doing that. But the ones that stuck around appreciated, just the transparency that I have provided along the way. And so the first recommendation is do not make a game for 9 years. That's really stupid. Don't follow my footsteps. The second thing is to maintain a fan base and their interest. As an indie, I think transparency is the best way to go. I think it's worked for me. It's the best way I can say that.
No, I think you're probably very correct on that. Transparency, I think, is especially like indies. Like we have this problem where like there is this thing of like bigger studios have a built-in audience, right? Like if BioWare announces a game, like everyone's just gonna hear about it, whether people care to or not, right? Or like something like a super small game, like how do I do these things and build community and transparent. Like transparency is interesting too because like I think indie games, the built-in fan of indie games, a lot of times are like indie developers or like people who want to be indie developers too, just because they want to see what's out there. I'm kind of curious if you've had kind of that experience too of like when you're talking with people who are like kind of intrigued by the game, how many of them kind of come from probably a more of a gaming background or game development background versus like general fans that say like a bigger games kind of naturally get.
Yeah, I think because I wrote quite a few articles on Gamma Sutra, which is a trade game dev, website, again now gamedeveloper.com. Because I was writing and talking about the game dev journey there, I think it brought in a lot of game dev people, enthusiasts, right? Maybe people that are hacking away in Unity on their own time. Maybe they never released something or whatever, but they're really enthusiastic about game development as opposed to just playing games, like playing the latest Rockstar game or whatever is coming out. So I feel like I have at least probably a third of my audience is in that kind of game devs that are interested in game dev. And yeah.
That makes sense. I think we've kind of talked around it a bit. Let's kind of jump into the game itself. As we said, we're here to specifically talk about Archmage Rises. I know it's been 9 years, so probably won't have you start with the beginning of the game. But can we talk about kind of talking about like obviously this is a game that's kind of tabletop RPGs, kind of as you're kind of selling it as like a digital tabletop RPG. Obviously, we're talking stuff like Baldur's Gate came out recently, and you're kind of seeing these CRPGs kind of out there too. What do you kind of made you kind of want to make this system, or kind of what was it in the system that kind of you like is this really cool twist, unique thing that kind of made you want to go and kind of create this?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of D&D and have been most of my life. I love computer role-playing games, from the Gold Box games and Ultima to the latest ones. Dragon Age is I really like, and Skyrim, of course. So, but the thing that really kind of bothers me is the game worlds are always all static, and the NPCs are always standing there at their vendor thing, and they always say the same things, and nothing ever changes in their lives. And if the game devs didn't create, say, a spouse for the character, then they just don't have one, and it like never changes, right? And they're always the same age and such. And so in running my own D&D campaign, the thing that was compelling to me and the players at the table was the progress. Like as people age and, life kind of continues on, and you see an NPC that was young and then they fall in love and then maybe they have kids, like that's like so real. And that's what I wanted to reach out and touch, was to that kind of moment. And is it possible to do that in a video game? And going back to 80s, early 90s, and I look at the games that we were making then, and with the kind of technology that we had with, less than 640K RAM, and it has to stick on a 320K floppy disk. And you fast forward kind of 10 years from 1992 to 2002, and we have DVDs with gigabytes of stuff, and we have gigabytes of RAM and whatever, but the gameplay hasn't changed. The photorealism has totally changed. Like you have these amazing 3D models and whatever, but the gameplay hasn't changed. And so I was thinking, because I come from a background in enterprise software development, working with mission critical systems and big data, like millions of rows, maybe even in a day or two, that we have to process and crunch through. I was like, okay, this kind of seems like a data problem. Is it possible to build a simulator that would allow the player to take actions in the world and then correctly respond? And I'm not really talking about AI and like the Chat GPT kind of AI, but just is it possible to do something like free a person that's trapped by goblins, and they start living in the town, and then they fall in love with another person that's living in the town, and then they have kids, and then they die, and you can attend their funeral. And you maybe they were a blacksmith, and their kids now take over from the family business of being a blacksmith. Like, is that possible to build that? And I'm like, yeah, I think it is. And I would really love to play that. And I just so happened at the beginning of it all to talk with somebody about it. It was like, I've always wanted to play a game like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not the only person. And that's when I just started kind of running with it. And now here we are. We're in early access, and we have a simulator. It still needs a lot of work. We have NPCs that are running AI that still needs a lot of work, and we're starting to really get there. We are making it real.
That's one. So I've got yeah. So I kind of come from a similar background of maybe like of serious games and like simulations and stuff. I'm very curious, as you said, about the system, that the whole idea, right? Like, and it's actually because, like, to me, this actually is one of the weird circumstances where game design and AI, I think, could mix, and it feels less icky. Of specifically this idea of like these creatures that are living kind of on their own world that just happen to be in this digital simulation. I'm curious, how are you handling, from a technical point of view, kind of those calculations or limitations? Do you kind of just have it kind of going in its own system, and then when you come back, it like generates it? Or like, how do you kind of handle that to make sure you're not overloading, like, so now it's a 10,000 gigabyte game or whatever?
Exactly. Well, I can tell you that I've taken some dead ends, which is one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to make this. And so the first approach that I had, which I would call bottom up, which is, hey, you have an NPC, they have a certain amount of desires. Every NPC has a certain amount of desires for food and for shelter and whatever, typical psychology stuff. So kind of program that in and kind of let them loose in the world, and they, work their job in order to get money, in order to like feed themselves and whatever. And so, you could sit there and you can kind of watch this little thing going on, stuff. So great. Now I look at my D&D, guidebook, and it's like, oh, here's a town of 25,000 people. I'm like, okay, well, let's scale this up to 25,000. And then it like comes to a crawl, and like, it's like totally unplayable. And so for a long time, my solution was just to limit the populations of the towns to like 100 or so, and I was passing time by the hour, and so whenever you took a step in the world, then I would go and process like 10,000 NPCs about whether they were hungry or when they went to sleep or something, and so that was like pretty ludicrous. But sometimes you have to make those mistakes and get to those dead ends to go, okay, what here is right and what isn't. And so what I figured out, and this is going to seem so obvious to anybody listening to this, but anyway, sometimes you got to see these things for yourself. What I figured out is that when I'm on the east coast of the particular world, we have a procedurally generated world, so it's different every time. But when I'm on the east coast, it kind of doesn't matter on the West Coast whether somebody goes to the inn and has a drink, or they go to sleep. Right? Like, that doesn't matter. Like, your player can't see it. It doesn't matter. Like, what am I doing wasting all these cycles and stuff? And so that's when I came up with the idea of time dilation. And so the idea is that time runs around you. And so if you go to town A on the West Coast and you run around in there, and it like simulates everybody and such, and then you leave, It pauses them. I kind of got this idea from SimCity 4 when you do the region play, and you would like stop playing one city and go and play another city next to it. It would pause basically the simulation. And then when you come back, it would catch up the simulation, and that's basically what we're doing. And so, if you don't come back to a town for 5 years and then you come back, then it catches up the 5 years. Like what is everybody doing? And at that point, it doesn't matter. The person drank at 7 p.m. and then they went to sleep at 11 p.m. Like all those things don't matter over 5 years. And so we were able to skip over a lot of things that don't matter. But it doesn't entirely solve the problem, because if the mayor of West Coast town hates the mayor of East Coast town, and I haven't been there, he still needs to do things. He still needs to interact with the rest of the world. And so just figuring out like which things can be a part of the time dilation, which things can't, who's getting their turns, as we call it, because I do a lot of kind of paper design from board games and stuff. So when does somebody get their turn, and what are the actions they can do in their turn? That's kind of how we figured it out. And so I think this model is scalable, and this is what we're going with, and I think it's going to work for the release.
That sounds great, and also that makes a lot of sense, because I was very curious, because I was like that was the exact thing I was thinking too, of like when you're in one section and the other section is like, how do you handle that? So I'm assuming then you said time kind of goes around you. Do you know kind of like, or I'm assuming like if a player is like on the West Coast and disappears for like, we'll say a year in game or whatever, and comes back, I'm assuming when they come back you're running some sort of like, what would a year look like, just kind of on the spot?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so we had to change our AI routines in order to not handle things in hours and days, but to be able to take these big batches of time. And so when you're running around inside the town, things are moving 1 hour at a time, right? And so we need that fidelity. But then we also need to be able to handle like, hey, here's 5,000 hours, go. And it can figure out like, okay, these things are not important, and these things are a priority. So we can kind of skim the surface of the time and still do all the things. And the player, that's the big thing I realize, is the player doesn't notice, right? Like, if you ran every hour of simulation for 5,000 hours and the guy ends up being worth 5,000 gold, or you just run once a month for 12 months and the guy's worth 4,800 gold, the player doesn't notice. It's fine.
Yeah. Like there is a truth, right? So like it's one of the dirty tricks of game design is like half the time we're lying to you of the player. Like sure, stuff is happening in the background, but like yeah, like as you saw, like sure, players don't really know kind of when stuff happens. So that's, I do find this system kind of very interesting. I want to talk about kind of a bit more kind of how the game kind of works. Obviously, as we talk about this grand system you kind of worked on, what is kind of the player doing? Like obviously people are kind of picturing like D&D stuff probably. What would you kind of say the player is doing, and then kind of can we describe kind of the world a bit more that they're kind of experiencing?
Sure. So yeah, starting from D&D or Pathfinder, it probably fills in a lot of the picture. So just imagine kind of a Forgotten Realms, Lord of the Rings-ish kind of world, and you're born into it, and you're raised by peasants, and you have this natural talent for magic. Your parents don't know what to do with that, and they hire a tutor for you, and this is our character creation process where you're making these kinds of choices, like who are the kind of friends that you hang out with in your adolescence, and then you have 3 mage tutors. Which one are you going to pick? And then you graduate or get kicked out of mage school, and then you're on your own. You're in this sandbox world. You don't have to do anything. There is no like main quest sort of thing. I challenge people to tell me, what is the main quest in Skyrim? And they're actually like, I don't really know. There's some battle going on between these Norse people and these kind of Romany people. But I don't really know. And so we're kind of like that, where it's just like make your own way in the world. So there's quests that people have that you can go and slay monsters. There's fetch quests. Nobody's excited about fetch quests, but anyways, they exist. And we don't yet have it, but one of the things that we're going to work on as part of our roadmap is factions And so you can become head of like the Mages Guild. And that's a really big deal, and that's where you become the Archmage. So if there was to be a main quest, most people would probably gravitate towards that. Like, hey, I'm a mage, and I'm part of this organization that's sort of like the Catholic Church of magic, and I can end up being the Pope of magic, which is, you know, the Archmage of it all. And then what we have is monsters that are in the world, and the monsters have their own agendas, and they run under their own AI, and they're trying to do their things. They're trying to spread and feed and such. And so the intersection between the humans and the monsters is where you get the really interesting bits of, hey, my farm, I can't farm my farm because there's all these goblins running around on it. Or my kid got kidnapped by the goblins and taken off into the forest. Can you go find them for me? And so there's a lot of those kind of things do. But there's other things like writing poetry or singing as a bard in taverns. There's gambling. It just goes on and on, because what I see in D&D is just like a lot of freedom for personal expression of character, and that's what I'm trying to capture. And so our graphics are 2D. We try to utilize text as much as we can, not as much as Dwarf Fortress, but try to use it as much as we can so that we can give the player lots of options. So one example is we recently added in mounts into the game, and because I don't have to have a 3D animated model of every single mount, I can give the player a lot of personal expression choices, like, is your mount a horse? Is it a pony? Is it a bear? Is it a panther? Is it a Pegasus? Is it a dragon? Is it a griffin? And like, it's just some stats and some text to help the player's imagination. And so we're trying to provide as much freedom of action within the game, like becoming friends with people. We will be adding in romance, the ability to have children. Later in DLC, we'll have the ability to raise up apprentices and give them jobs. There's trading, because it has a real supply-demand economy built into the simulation. So just like lots and lots of verbs.
That kind of makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, as we're talking too, right? So obviously this game's been in development for 9 years, and right now you're in early access. What kind of to you kind of does that mean? Kind of how long? So like one of the big things about players, right, is how long will this last? What that looks like. So the first question is, how long do you expect early access to last? And my second question, which is a big one, I think, for games like this, do you expect, and obviously there's some unknown in this, that players' progress in your early access version will transfer over to the full game, or do you think kind of there's a chance of like some save problems?
Well, we have already experienced save problems and people losing their progress. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm embarrassed, not because that's funny.
Oh,
it's
no.
actually terrible.
We've all had that. Like this is not like I don't think this is a you exclusive thing of this happening before.
Yeah. So I just actually made a mandate to the team of like, we have to hyper focus on protecting player progress. I'm not saying it wasn't important before, but because it's a roguelike, like it's a permadeath game where you have one life and then you die and then you start again, I would say it was kind of important, but not terribly important, because we kind of expect you to start again anyway. But with the kind of features that we've been adding, so recently we added a mage tower. So that's another thing you can do, is you can build a mage tower up to the sky and fill it with rooms and invite people from the town to come and live with you and stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. So if you spend 5 hours designing and building out your mage tower, and then we put out an update that corrupts your save, and now you can't have your mage tower anymore. Like, that's really awful experience. And so I've come to realize what I thought. I originally started off thinking, because it's a roguelike, oh, you know, a run is kind of like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. But now I've come to realize what the fans really want is they really want to sink into this simulated world. They really want to have roots. They really want to personalize and customize that world. So we're talking playtimes of 40 to 100 hours in one generated world. We have to protect the player's progress in that. And so we've had the internal meetings. I just made an announcement to the fan base, say, you know what, I get it. We can't do that again. So are we going to screw up between now and 1.0? Yeah, we are. We're going to do something stupid and there's just going to be this inevitability where we do lose player progress. But I'm hoping that we go from doing that 20 times to maybe 2 or 3 times between now and 1.0. And then from 1.0, like, it shouldn't happen anymore, because the level of changes that we make to the game after 1.0 are not the same right now when we're building out each one of these significant features. So that was an answer to your second question.
Yeah.
Your first question, go ahead.
First one has to do with like time. Like, what do we? So, how long do you kind of expect this early access versus 1.0 kind of to last?
Yeah. So I get that question a lot. I get that question a lot from my wife. I get my question from the team, and I get that question from the fans. The truthful answer is I don't know. I mean, I've demonstrated that I don't know how long it takes to make this game because I've been making it for so long. But I can put it in some kind of reasonable context, which is we have 12 steps in our roadmap in order to get to 1.0. That was feature driven. That wasn't like, 12 months and 12 features, there you go. But each one of those roadmap features is kind of around 4 to 6 weeks or so of work, depending on how much the team is focused on it. So for instance, I had to pull somebody off of working on the next update in order to fix some bugs that have been coming up in the Steam forums, so that, as long as we don't have too many of those kinds of situations, we can kind of stay on track. We're looking somewhere around a year, I don't know, 16 months or something in early access. I guess what I can say is we went into early access in April 23rd of this year, and we have done 2 major content updates out of our roadmap of 12 since then. So in kind of 4 months, we managed to do 2 big content updates.
And honestly, that's a pretty good cadence, because like, as a team, that's not that big. I do have a question here for you, and I'm just kind of curious. And obviously, stuff can happen in early access, but just kind of, so as we're talking, your Steam page is up on my monitor, because usually it says, as a whole, I want to point out that your game is mostly positively viewed on Steam. It looks like kind of recently you've had a little more, I say, mixed reaction, as that's what Steam's saying. Do you mind kind of talking about kind of what has happened maybe in this last update or 2 that kind of probably changed the general reaction, and kind of if there's anything you guys are kind of changing in response to that?
Sure. So the first thing is that I've learned a lot now as a dev about that recent thing in Steam. And if you go last week, it was overwhelmingly positive. And then 1 week later, it is mixed. And it's like, wow, that's like a lot of stages that have changed. And the answer is, it just depends on what days people leave the positive reviews and the negative reviews.
Oh, that's a valid thing. I just saw that. I was very curious, kind of anything changed or whatever.
Yeah, so like one day we'll have like 5 positive reviews, and then another day we might have 2 negative reviews, and then we'll be overwhelmingly positive. And then because of the 30-day moves and the 5 positives drop off, and then suddenly you're in mixed. And then 4 days go by and those negative ones drop off, and then suddenly you're in, positive, very positive and stuff. So it is what it is, right? And so I was just looking at a game, and I was like, oh, this game looks pretty good. And I see the mixed thing, and I was like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to play this game. And now as a dev, I'm like, oh, it'll probably change by next week, like what that is. But there was a larger thing, which is I went to early access. I have been selling this game on my website for $30 for years, for over 5 years, 6 years. I've been selling it on my website as a pre-order for $30. And we went into early access, and I priced it for $30 as I had been, because I really wanted to respect and honor the people that had bought so early on and waited for so long. Mm-hmm. And whenever you launch a game, you have to put like a launch discount on it. And I felt really bad about that. I was like, man, that sucks. Like, these people paid $30 and now these people are getting a 20% discount on it. And it's like, it's not fair. Like, the world is not fair. And how can I make this right? And so, I put it up for $30 and had the 20% launch discount. And we did something for the people that had previously pre-ordered to try and make that up to them. Anyway, So it comes out at $30, and we got a whole bunch of people from our wish lists that bought into it, and they're like, "Wow, this is cool, this is fun." And then we had a bunch of people that are new to it, and they're like, "Wow, there's really not a lot here," and some people really negatively feeling like this thing's like a tech demo. This is not a game yet, and such. And man, I paid $30 for this. Like, if Elden Ring is on sale, like that's pretty close to this. And so. I read every review. So we read every single review and we try to look at, okay, what are the commonalities between these things? What can we fix? What can we do? And I just came to the realization that $30 is just too much right now. Like there's not enough game. That's what people are saying in the reviews. There's not enough game here to justify $30. So then I went through the tough choice of changing the price permanently to $10. And so I did that, and the fans have been overall very welcoming to that. They're like, "Hey, dude, like whatever it takes to be sustainable and to finish this game, like we're behind you on this." And I really appreciate the fans for following us in that. I have definitely had people say, "Serious? I paid $30 for this thing, and now you're charging 10 for it." I had to make a choice that was best long term for the business, and I do feel very bad for those that had that. I would feel exactly the same way they do. Sadly, there's not enough tools on Steam to like be able to do something like, hey, for all the people that have bought before this time, can give them this exclusive digital item or something like that, or give them an achievement for like an early supporter or something. Like there just isn't that kind of tooling. So I just had to like make the decision and go with it. So in general, it's been well received, and our reviews have gone from kind of 60-40 positive to kind of 80% positive. The value proposition of the game changed by lowering the price to $10, and people seem to be happier with it. There's still negative reviews, and I still read those, and the things that they're saying are still true, but we're working towards finishing this game.
Nice. No, that sounds great, and I do understand. I'm actually curious. So obviously you said you've been for 5 years. I don't know how practical this is, right? Were you open to, is it just logistically like such a nightmare of the people who bought on your site kind of finding ways to do price adjustments? I'm assuming it's just kind of really hard to do. Like obviously you said like they paid more in the past and now the game's a lot cheaper, kind of. I'm assuming there's no good way to kind of, I don't want to say compensate it, but I think you understand what I'm asking.
Yeah. So I could dive into that a little bit more. So in 2014, when I launched the game with a teaser trailer and a website listing out the features of the game, there were some things that I listed out, like the ability to have children and sort of raise children, like the whole raising children thing. This is not The Sims, like it's not that involved, but just the fact that it's possible to get married and have kids, and it's kind of there. That's something that I promised on that website all along, right? And so now I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, there's like so much game here to build. Do I really need that raising children part? Is that really that significant? Is that something that people require in this procedural roguelike role-playing game? And my answer is no. But I don't actually know who plopped down their $30 because of that bullet point and who didn't, right? So I'm like, well, I made this promise, but I can't not deliver on it. So then what I decided was, you know what? I'm going to remove that feature from the regular game and make it a DLC feature, but then all those people that pre-ordered, I'm going to give them that DLC for free. And so that's what I went to them. And so those that pre-ordered on the website actually get 2 DLCs for free. And that kind of helped justify the, hey, these people just coming in today get a Steam discount, whereas I paid the full $30. It's like, well, yeah, but you get these 2 DLCs with these features, and they're like, okay, cool. So that's what we did. Now, for this recent price change, I don't have that really a capability of doing that, just because of I don't know who it all is and such. With the website, I had a lot more data, and it was only 500 people, so I was able to email those people and kind of figure it out.
Well, that makes that like your answer makes sense. I was just kind of curious because obviously, yeah, there I can imagine there were definitely people who didn't love that, as you said. So, but yeah, we have been talking about Archmage Rises. As we kind of get to the tail end here and close it up, I will leave kind of the floor to you for a second. Kind of, is there anything feature-wise or any final pitch you would like to make to people who might be interested to go check out the game?
Yeah, it's what's exciting to me is the whole reason the game is a simulator is so it reacts to your choices. So if you go and tick off the person in a town, like the mayor, and then you find that other people start treating you poorly, it's because of that. It's that like kind of realistic response. If you are go and do heroic things in a town, then everybody like speaks to you better and is more open to you with relationship, and they're giving you gifts and such. That it just, to me, it becomes a lot more like there's a GM behind the scenes that is doing that more than I've seen in any other game. So that's what we're working towards, and I think it's going to be really great once we hit 1.0.
Perfect. Well, I want to say thank you again for joining me. If people want to go check it out, the game is Archmage Rises, if I could speak would be great. You are Defiance Game Studio. The game is currently available on early access for $9.99 USD. So go check it out on Steam. And again, best of luck as you are kind of working down your road of early access and dealing with all the fun turbulence that comes.
Thank you so much for letting me be here and share some of our story. Really appreciate it.
The SWW show and all of its affiliate podcasts are podcast by me, Mike Maroney, and AJ Losi, sometimes by contributors, including Corey King. You can follow the SWW show on social media at the SWW show, or sooner or later you go to patreon.com/SWW to help us out. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.